Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Elevate Your Equity podcast, where investors with a special emphasis on couples begin, continue, and deepen their journey to financial freedom together using the powerful vehicle of real estate investing to do it. Today is an absolute treat. I know I say this so many times with all of our podcasts, but this one is so much fun. There's so many stories and so many gems of wisdom in this one. Our guest is Dave Seymour, a retired 16-year veteran of the fire service who launched his real estate career over a decade ago and rapidly became one of the country's top investors. Within his first few years, Dave transacted tens of millions of dollars of real estate and has become one of the nation's leading experts in multifamily transactions. His unabridged passion for business and real estate put him on the radar of A&E's television network, as well as multiple news organizations like CBS, ABC, CNBC, Fox News, and Flipping Boston, which aired on A&E for multiple seasons. Dave has been sought after as a no-nonsense investor with zero tolerance for inefficiency and speculation. His partnership with Shark Tank's Kevin Harrington has disrupted the private equity landscape, allowing investors access to institutional quality CRE assets that have typically only been for the elite. And he's helped accredited investors on their very first deal, as well as guided some of the largest investment firms in the nation through complex transactions. Dave's blue-collar attitude in a white-collar world is why investors seek his advice and want to invest alongside his team at Freedom Venture Investments. And I must say, I had such a great time with this. It was so much fun, wasn't it?
It was the best. There were times when we were just laughing our heads off, and then there were times where we were just so moved to tears. And I would really recommend listening to this from beginning to end because you don't want to miss 1 minute of Dave's stories.
Yeah, it's fantastic. You guys are going to enjoy it. So please just take a seat, grab some popcorn and get comfortable because this is a fantastic podcast. You're really going to enjoy it. Very entertaining and very fluid and very easy to listen to. So we'll just go ahead and bring him on now. Without further ado, here's Dave Seymour. And here we are. Dave, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you here.
It's a pleasure to be here. This is the first podcast I've done with a married couple. I feel like I have an appendage that isn't here, my better half. But as we said before we started, it's like, she was all flustered. It's like, I don't know about your wife, but my wife plans date night like 2 weeks in advance. What she's going to wear, is she going to do her hair, what restaurant are we going to, does it have the right food that we both want to eat? It's like all of those things that are so critical for me to be successful in business, she takes care of. And I reach out for things, and my beautiful bride is there to love me, support me, take care of me. I feel so spoiled. And look at you, you got your beautiful wife and I don't. I'm jealous.
No.
Okay. There might be a part 2, and hopefully after she hears this, she'll be convinced to join us next time.
Yeah. Well, maybe I could get her on, and we'll the second go around we'll bring Mary Beth on because she is a fiery little thing once she gets going. That's for sure.
Awesome. Well, I just got to say all of the points the extra credit points that you've just earned, because all you got to do is play back this, and right if you hit stop right now, you've already earned like points for at least 2 or 3 weeks, so
you know what's funny, like I've been married a couple of times, so I've got some skill sets in how to fail in a marriage as well as how to be successful in a marriage. And first of all, it takes 2 people to make any relationship work, and it takes 2 people for it to not work. But I've definitely got to a place today where it's still a marriage and it's not perfect, but it's progress, not perfection. She heard me on a podcast in my home office, and I was talking about her, and I used the same line that I shared with you before we started recording. I said, my wife, Mary Beth, was the first person to ever give me permission to be wealthy, right? To ever gave me permission to go out and slay the dragon, to use that metaphor. And she is the rock that I get to stand on so that I can look cool. And the day I started my real estate career was it was a seminar that we were attending. And it was $27,000 worth of education that we invested in that day. I say we, because she looked at me and she said, "What do you think?" I said, "Mary Beth, I have to do this. I've run out of choices in my life." And she said, go get him, killer. She said, I'm proud of you and I love you and I'll support you in anything you want to do. And we actually have that engraved in our wedding bands today. So I was sharing this story on a podcast, how important she is in my life. She did the worst thing ever. I come out of my office and she goes, you remind me of my mother. That's not a good opening line, right? I'm like, what do you mean I remind you of your mother? She said, how you speak about me to other people isn't always the same vibration and sensation I get from you. So basically what she's saying is, I love you, but it would be really nice if I could hear you say those wonderful things to me and not just to other people. She said, don't forget how it all started. And I felt like I'd just been, like scorned, like, yes, dear, I'm sorry. So now, when you get up in the morning, even after, we've been together 18 years, married 15 last October, it's like, we have to put the effort in to make any relationship work. And it's like, you get up in the morning, I say, I love you, honey. Thank you for making breakfast. I appreciate you taking care of the kids and looking after me in the house and all the other wonderful things you do. I love you very. Oh, stop being a jerk, she says. I'm like, so you can't win.
I think that's fantastic, Dave. Thank you so much for sharing some of those very intimate things that happen inside the house. I think where a lot of our listeners are, and usually where we like to start is we like to start by saying, okay, how did you and your wife begin going down this real estate investing road together? I know that you're a pro at this. You've been around, this game for quite some time. You've been doing it for a long time. How was it at the beginning? When you were first starting out, was your wife just as supportive in your real estate adventures? And how did that all come about? Just want to hear.
Yeah, obviously I get that question a lot. How did you start? It's kind of nice to frame it around how did you and your wife start? Because it really is a family decision. It's not just one entrepreneur in the household. To give it some context and some structure to that answer, I was a firefighter and a paramedic for 16 years. I worked way too many hours between 2 full-time jobs, about 120 hours. I had no financial intelligence. I grew up as a working class kid in the south of London and emigrated to the States. So I was always trained very well in making other people rich, My father's best advice was do a solid 40 hours. Don't lie, son. Don't cheat. Don't steal. Do the right thing. If after 40, 50 years of working, you might have enough money to retire. You'll never have a house. You won't earn enough money for that, David. But you might have just enough money to have a wife, couple of kids, and then around 75, you'll probably die. You know what I mean? It was like, that was it. That was the entrepreneurial spirit I grew up with. So as a firefighter, I loved the camaraderie of it and the teamwork. And it was through the fire department that I met Mary Beth. She was a labor and delivery nurse at the hospital. And I had gone through some pretty rough personal times. And we met in a labor and delivery room, delivering another woman's baby. I mean, they're not the most romantic of environments, but I can tell looking at you guys, when right is right. I wasn't looking for love in a labor and delivery room, man. That's not where you go. But this 5'1", 110 pounds soaking wet little fireball took this great big hulk of a man. You know what I mean? I'm 6'2", 220, 225. I was working out back then. And she turned my world upside down. And we went on a journey together in financial insecurity in the beginning of our marriage. I got the house. I've got the job. Mary Beth is my wife. She's still working as a nurse, but there was no financial freedom. And that causes tension and pain between a marriage. I don't care how strong it is. The number one reason marriages fail is finances. And I went to this real estate seminar and I just kind of referred to that. And she said to me, do you really want to do this real estate thing? And I said, I'm out of choices, babe. I'm working 120 hours a week between 3 full-time jobs. And I still can't make ends meet. And I'm praying that the phone rings for an overtime in the firehouse so I can earn an extra $200, right? That was my big goal back then. And that day she gave me permission to go after it. Now, in the beginning, we were going to be in business together, but she couldn't read my mind, which is a problem when I'm moving at 120 miles an hour and she's trying to slow things down and make sure that everything's in the right place. And it's just not my DNA to do that. You know, a lot of my friends over the years have said to me, Seymour, you're a pain in the rear end. And I'm like, why? They say, because your business model is make a mess and then learn how to monetize it. And that's kind of my DNA. But we were maybe 3 months in, she got $27,000 on her credit cards of my education. And we're about 3 months in, and there were not results. And I remember she was standing there in the kitchen, and she's like, you said you were going to do this, big fella. What are you doing? What's happening? That I've got another credit card payment coming in the mail. What's going on? You know, it was one of those coming to Jesus moments, I think they call them, you know. And I realized that what I did that day was I invested $27,000 in education. That's what the front door looked like. But the reality was I got $27,000 worth of accountability and the love of my life to hold my feet to that fire. So we let the shackles of being in business together kind of go to the side, and I took off. And I went after it with a vengeance, the same way I went after my fire career. You know, when everybody else is running out, we go running in. Kind of did it the same way because it was 2008 when I started. Remember 2008? If you were doing real estate investing in 2008, you were a leper. You were like a cancer survivor. You know, people blessed you as you walked down the street. You know, it was like, you'd say, I'm in real estate. They go, oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. Right. But out of that massive chaos came a lot of opportunities. That's kind of where we grew it.
Wow.
Yeah. It's interesting to look back at those days, my friend, because
you know, what I wanted to do, I wanted to back up there too, because there's so much there. But one of the things that I really liked that you said, okay, was as you were going through this journey, that visualization of seeing your wife in the kitchen waiting for you to come home, and as soon as you open up the door, you can see the body language, you can see all that happening. I love that you said, with that image in mind, that the $27,000, it wasn't about the content itself, it was about the accountability. It was the switch from, I have the information now, I've spent the money, what am I going to do with it now? It's now the switch. It's the committedness, right? It's the tenacity to be like, okay, I'm in this thing, right? So maybe can you talk a little bit more about what that tenacity meant? Like let's dive into the details of what that meant, because I know at the time you had 2 jobs, right? And when you said you went all in, I want to know more about what it meant for Dave and his wife.
Yeah. Great questions, man. It's actually empowering to go back and revisit, you know, those earlier days. You know, I think to myself, they were simpler then. Like when you're in the moment, it always feels challenging, right? No matter where we are in life. Oh, it's going to be a challenge today. It's a tough day. But then when you look at retrospect, it's almost like, that was easy in comparison to what we're doing today. So accountability, there's a few things about me that have to come into context that are important. Number one, when I was 23 years old, I drank my last drink. I'm a sober alcoholic. I've been sober now over 31 years. I'm 54 years old. Done a lot of work, right? Been on a pretty consistent journey. So the word accountability being a nasty word, I removed that many, many years ago, right? So to then make a conscious decision, what was I, 30, 38? Yeah, I was 38 years old, man. Imagine that, like banging your head against the wall for that many years thinking it's going to change, and it doesn't. So I'm about 38 years old, and I'm now transitioning into this new world. I brought the same philosophies of not drinking for 24 hours into my business life. So what I did was I made a conscious decision every day that I was going to do something small, large, huge, didn't matter, something every single day to move my business forward. And if I didn't do that, then who was responsible for that? There was only me to blame. To thine own self be true. 3 o'clock in the morning, when you're looking in the mirror, that's when the truth really comes out, right? That's it. When there's nobody else around, nobody telling you you suck, nobody telling you you're incredible, right? There's no other opinions other than your own. Now you got to own it. So for me, pushing forward like that was just part of who I was. I had made a decision. And again, because Mary Beth supported me unconditionally from a place of love, you know, the reality has conditions attached to it, but the feeling and the emotion doesn't. I was able to really put some velocity behind what I was doing. So for me, it was great story, right? This is so good. I forgot I did this. I had access to the MLS, the multiple listing service. I wasn't a realtor, and neither was Mary Beth, but I had access to the MLS. And I remember I was going to the firehouse. I was going to the firehouse for my night shift, 5 p.m. through to 7 a.m. the next morning. And I said to Mary Beth, here's what I want you to do. I want you to log into the MLS. I want you to pull down every single multifamily property that's on the multiple listing service in our city. And I want you to fire off, it was faxes back then, fax an offer to the listing broker for 50% of list price. And I remember writing it all down. She says, okay. So I go to work, right? And she calls me maybe 4 hours into my shift, and she is bawling her eyes out. She is just so distraught. And I'm like, beautiful, what's going on? Are you okay? Well, I started doing what you told me to do. And all these realtors are calling and they're swearing at me and they're cussing me out and they're telling me who the hell do I think I am and blah, 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 blah. She said, I'm not working in your business anymore. She was a wreck. She was a wreck. Now, my DNA says, I'm going to talk my way through every single one of those people who want to call me and go to war. Because, I've got linguistics behind me. I'm a little bit of a wordsmith, Yep. So those were tough days, man. Those were tough days. But I tell you what, out of that one campaign, there was a realtor in there who I ended up doing a couple of deals with the following year. So it was worth it for me, but it wasn't worth it for Mary Beth. So we very quickly became accountable to each other, right? And, it's funny, when we were dating, she said she didn't want kids, right? She lied. We go back to that same hospital where we met and delivered our now 11-year-old. She said, one's fine. She lied. We go back and get now Bennett's 9 years old. But it's like, she's accountable for what she does in our family, and I'm accountable for what I do. And so far, God bless, it works pretty good. You know what I'm saying? So
I do. Thank you so much for sharing that. What a great story. What really stood out to me in this, and what's relatable right now as real estate investors, because now we're talking real estate investor to real estate investor, right?
Yeah.
I'm hearing that one of the actions that you did, it was massive action, right? And it seemed like there was a whole lot of nothing like results.
Yeah.
But it turns out that all of the results that came from that were the intangibles. You learned a little bit about yourself. She learned something about herself. And then all it took was one thing to go right. Because in real estate investing, I'm sure that you've heard the funnel before, right? You make 100, you look at 100 properties, offer on 10, and you get in contract to close on 1.
Yeah.
And so it's the exact same principle with skills, right? In real estate. You throw everything out there, you try to see what works. You have to know your talents to try to narrow it down from doing 100 things down to maybe 50, right? And so maybe of those 50, 10 will work well, and then 1 is the one that will go. But that's the beauty about real estate investing and business in general. It only takes one. It only takes one thing to work right. And so if you're able to take that one connection with the agent, right, or one system that you learned, you've won in this game. And it's just doing that over and over and over again to lead to the point where you are right now, Dave, which is very impressive.
Let me ask you a question, because the day somebody shared with me the 80-20 rule, the 80-20 rule of our actions, right? I mean, that annoyed me when I first was told about the 80-20. I'm like, what do you mean? I'm busy. I'm doing, man. I'm out there. I'm doing. And the guy said to me, yeah, but do you realize that 20% of what you do creates 80% of your income? 80% of what you do creates next to nothing. And I'm like, but I'm making noise, man. I'm making waves. And that's exactly what you're saying is entrepreneurship in and of itself has almost like a designated or a predestined journey that every entrepreneur has to go down. You can go get business coaching, you can get real estate coaching, you can get Bitcoin buying coaching, like you got all of this coaching. But at the end of the day, the most valuable lessons are from the mistakes that I've made, right? For me, right? The ability to embrace failure, because I know without a doubt that if it burned me, I'm never going to do that again, right? It's embracing, or they call it failing forward. And Trust me, my friend, I did a lot of that. I did a lot of personal development early in my career and continue to do so today. I became a student of some of the very, very best out there. Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul. Spent $20,000 to go sit on his couch with him out in California and hang out at his house one day. It was like, it was the end of an open loop for me to spend time with him. So understanding those, they're now unwritten rules, right? We just accept it as the norm. You know, even in our business today, buying large apartment complexes, we still see probably 25 to 30 deals a week. The underwriting on a large commercial asset is pretty intensive. So we'll underwrite maybe 5 of those. LOIs go out on 3 of them, and we try and buy, you know, 1 deal, maybe 2 deals a month. So it's a numbers game. And the sooner that somebody accepts that, but let me ask you a question. In your career in the beginning, were you a victim of analysis paralysis? Was that part of like your toolbox? Because it was definitely, look at him looking. Now you are, you know that you're under oath. All right. So
of course, yeah. You know, the podcast is the most sacred, you know, form of recording that there is out there. And thanks for asking the question. I touch on this in my book actually about how big of a hurdle overcoming analysis paralysis is. And I think, you know, knowing my personality, I tend to slip back into it. And so I have to consciously fight that urge. And that's where Sophie comes in, where she would say, "You're doing it again, sweetheart. It's time for you to move on. You know, it's time for you to make a decision and move." And I've learned to fight that tendency. And especially over the last couple of years, it's led to my biggest successes where I've been decisive and said, you know, 80-20 rule, it's close enough. I don't need to call the broker one more time and ask for more information and piss them off. That's kind of the thing, right? Is making that. And I think what really made it happen for me was, for instance, my very first investment here in California. We bought a property and I kept going over the numbers over and over again. An agent, bless his soul, he kept like showing me properties over and over again, these single family homes, and I kept underwriting them and it just couldn't quite pencil out. Imagine that in California, it wasn't penciling.
No way. Say that so.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually what I decided to do was like, this was one of these moments where she's like, we got to do something, right? Just like you had with your wife. And what I did was I said, all right, it's time for me to shift my frame of mind from saying, I'm going to make $1 million on the first deal to I'm going to learn something.
Yeah.
So now that took the pressure off me and I said, okay, where would I buy something that like in general, I would at least get some of my money back if I had to resell it. And that just made it a whole new ball game for me. And all of a sudden it just clicked. I got the property, learned a whole bunch of things about how to manage it, and then did a 1031 and everything just went uphill from there because you don't know what you don't know until you do something. And if you're afraid of doing it, it's never going to happen. So it's like this catch-22. And so that's why I really think it's super important for people like you and I. Dave, you're a doer, I can tell. I'm a doer as well. But sometimes it takes your wife or someone that's close to you to say, why are you slamming your head against that wall to try to bust a hole through it? Why don't you use this hammer right here? So that's really important.
I was very blessed to be able to, and I appreciate you sharing that because I resonate with it. I do. And there's a couple of things to that. One is procrastination, right? And the other one is fear. And then the other one is that sensation that people get when they run the numbers through the spreadsheet, and it makes right, and they'll color code the tabs, right? And if you ask, I put a spreadsheet together today, and I still to this day cannot figure out how to put in the right formulas to add up a column. It's like, stop, I'm not interested in it. It's like so outside of me. But there are some people that they have convinced themselves that the more finite their spreadsheets are and their underwriting, the better they are at real estate. Point in case, I was very blessed to be able to be, and still am today to some extent, a trainer and an educator in the real estate space, from wholesaling single family properties to today, you know, helping teach and teaching people how to buy, you know, large commercial assets. And I remember I was at an event. It was actually was it Cali? I think it was in Vegas. Anyway, long story short, I sat down with these 2 gentlemen. Both were professors at Harvard, right? And I'd known these guys pretty well. I'd seen them a couple of times at a few events. You know, they were kind of like seminar junkies. And they weren't, for some reason, they were either retired professors or they were still teaching, but they definitely had some financial challenges in their lives. And I sat down with them for a one-on-one, like impromptu coaching session. And I just listened to these guys tell me how smart they were. And I said to them, guys, can I be direct? Do you give me permission to tell you what I perceive to be truth? I'm very careful with my words. Will you give me permission to share with you what I perceive to be truth? Now that then lets the barriers down a little bit, right? Who are you to tell me what to do? I'm a Harvard professor. You don't even have a college degree, right? Right? I'm so smart. Just ask me. And I looked at him and I said, you're both incredibly intelligent gentlemen. And I have a lot of respect for that. However, I have zero respect for the fact that your intelligence has now become a detriment to your progress and your financial future rather than an asset. And you would think I had punched them right where the sun don't shine. Really, they were almost like crippled over because nobody had ever told them that before, because all they did was analyze deals. I said, how many offers did you make last week? None. What about last month? None. What about in the past 6 months since the last time? None. I said, and it's amazing, isn't it? If you don't make any offers, guess what? Genius. You don't get any deals. Oh, right? Oh, wow, Dave, you're so smart. I know, I can't help it. It's God gave me this superior intelligence when it came to real estate investing. So, you know, it's for those listening, be careful. Be careful. Don't let your significant other tell you you're smart when you're not either, right? Ask her to keep on telling you the truth, you know? So I get it, man. I get it. I'm kind of the same way. Yeah. Yes, Sophie. How are you?
Good. How are you? I have to say, I am so happy these are the moments where I'm so happy Derek convinced me to co-host this podcast with him, because we get to meet such amazing people like you. You are a breath of fresh air. And
I appreciate you saying that. Thank you. So are you, by the way. Like I said at the beginning, it's so nice to you know, have you on there as well, because I don't want to talk to him anymore. I want to talk to you now.
All right. Well.
I don't mean that, Derek. You're okay. That's okay. That's funny.
Steve,
we'll make some offers.
Yeah, I'm just soaking up everything you're saying, especially what I love most, what I really took away so far was that everything that you've been saying is rooted in, like you said, personal development and internal change, correct?
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Shifts and breakthroughs. You touched upon the two Harvard and guys.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you maybe expand more on like how, in what other ways the ego may get in the way of successful real estate investing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I learned a long time ago the ego, EGO, stands for ease God out. EGO. That's how I look at it, right? And don't get hooked or caught up on the word God, right? God is growth, God is change, God is good, God is whatever you want it to be, right? So ego, easing that progress out. That's what ego does. It gets in the way of it. So, and this is hard, man. It depends on any personal DNA structure that somebody has. My first thought is to give rather than receive, right? That took work, by the way. But when I'm in a position where, I'll give you an example, right? Somebody, we call them dick jams. Damn, I'm good. Just ask me, right? You know those people? They come up to you. You're the perceived expert in any specific field. They come up to you, ask you a question, and then begin to answer their own question, because all they really wanted to do was to tell you how smart they were. So ego it's a block. It's a destructive emotion. It's okay to be pride and prideful, but it's, in my opinion, ego is so destructive. So when I see it in other people, my working class blue collar background wants to give them a tongue lashing, right, and make them feel small. Back in the day, I was a little bit of a brawler, but those days are long gone. It's a different world today. So, today I learned to separate. And there was a captain in the fire department. His name was Larry Godbout. And I tell this often because it was impactful for me. I'm 29 years old. I got the good government job. I'm going to be a firefighter. And, retire with a government pension, everything's going to be great. That didn't happen. But anyway, Godbout came into our little academy that we had at the fire department. And I remember he was addressing the class, and it was a pretty big class. I think it was like 29 of us got hired that year. And he says, gentlemen, as you go out into the fire service, and it was a pretty big department. We had over 300 guys. He said, when you go out into the fire service, he said, you're going to find two kinds of firefighters. He said, you're going to find drains and you're going to find radiators. You're going to find the guys that just want to work for the fire department and suck all the bennies out of it and not give. He said, and then you're going to find radiators, guys who want to show up and train more, guys who want to show up and do more, guys who want to be great firefighters, great paramedics. They want to work their way through the ranks. They want to become lieutenants and captains, and they want to serve their community at the highest level possible. He said, and it's up to you, man. You decide where you want to go. So to your question about progress rather than perfection, letting ego sit to the side, I choose to be around radiators today, right? I learned in personal development a long time ago, I am the common denominator of the 5 people that I allow to influence me the most, right? So, that's part of why these podcasts are so cool, man. I get to meet you guys, influencing each other, right? The smiles and the nods that I'm seeing on your faces make me feel the same way, right? That's reciprocity. There's no ego in this conversation.
None
At all.
in this
So
business. Yeah, absolutely. In this business, it's always a win-win situation if you're ready for it, right? That's why mindset is so important, because if people don't have the mindset of giving and bringing, some value to the table, even anything, if it's their sweat equity or time or just willingness to work or hunger, right? Anything, there's a place for that. There's a place for people to be able to thrive in helping someone else. And that's what's so wonderful about this business and what attracted me to it. Now, I wanted to ask you too, you said that there was radiators and drains, right? In fire force or in the fire department. And let me ask you, okay, I'm really trying to put myself in your shoes. You said at the time that you were working that hard in your 20s and 30s, right? That you were working 2 full-time jobs, you were doing all this, right? How did you find it in your soul and in your DNA, as you said before, to be a radiator when you had so much right, so to speak, to be a drain because you're trying to provide for your family and you had all that? What happened either early on, or what did you learn to inspire you? Was it your influences from your father who was saying just work hard, do it well? Or maybe you can talk about that a little bit more.
Yeah, man, we're going a couple levels deeper tonight. This is good. Look, man, I've spent over 31 years without a drink, a drug, a mood or mind altering substance in my body. And to achieve that, I have attended thousands and thousands of meetings, primarily men's meetings. Sophie, no disrespects to the ladies, but I resonate with a man's journey through addiction, right? So the ability to radiate, I've seen things. I know what a real emergency is. You know what I'm saying? I've seen how devastating poverty is, racism, drug addiction, just how really shitty people can be to people, right? I've seen that. For me to get sucked down into that negativity just didn't fit with sobriety, right? Every day, I learned to say a prayer, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And then as I began my career in real estate, it was, I am wealth, I am abundance, I am joy. I learned the power of those 2 words, I am. And whatever that ends that sentence is what sets up the intention to the universe, right? So look, man, I'll be honest with you. I didn't share personal development with my boys in the firehouse, right? As I began to grow in personal development and separate out of there, we got a saying here in New England, it's called lobsters in a bucket. If you put 20 lobsters in a bucket and one tries to crawl out, the other 19 are going to pull that sucker back on down, right? The law of equilibrium, if you will. And a lot of friendships that I thought were going to last for years didn't. My conversations changed. I no longer, I think about waiting for the phone to ring so that I could earn $200 for a 14-hour overnight, overtime. I was just discussing today with a general partner, a co-GP who just raised a nice, like 1.2 million to come into on a syndicated deal that we're doing, and he bought himself a position in the deal, right? So it's like you can't have those conversations, right? When the student is ready, the teacher appears. So for me, I was very conscious about, we call it leveling up, right? Leveling up your game. Who can you level up with? So that's how, you seek radiators. If you seek them, they show up, right? You talk to, right, somebody from the old days, you say, hey, Bobby, how you doing? And Bobby will say, same old, another day, another dollar, blah, right? You know who they are. And unfortunately, sometimes they got the same last name as us. You know what I'm saying? Like if you're family members.
Yep.
But, it's freaking choice. It's a choice. And we're, as human beings, we're given choice. And that it ties it full circle so well with accountability, right? And entitlement. My Lord, when did we say that we were all entitled to this stuff, man? The left has gone so far left, the right has gone so far right. And all the real people with common sense and decency, they're all stuck in the middle. And we're looking around us today, and I know you guys are doing it out there in Cali. We do it here in Massachusetts, right? We're on the far ends of the scale now. The crazy Californians and the crazy Massachusetts people, oh my God, right? They'll give everything away to the drug dealers from South America, right? And then you got the wackos in Texas and hey, right, Florida. It's like, what are we doing, right? What happened to the great nation in which we live? The silent majority will win out. I don't know why I went off on that tirade, but this entitlement that seems to come into play. Guess what? We are not entitled to financial freedom. We have to work for it. We earn it. We commit. We overcome fear. False evidence appearing real. That's what fear stands for. Step into it. Step up. And when you have an opportunity to give somebody a hand up, give them a hand up, but do not give them a hand out.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
So anyway, I get a little soapboxy sometimes. I'm on a roll. I'm on a roll, baby.
I'm in the soapboxes. Keep them coming. Yeah. And so Dave, I love how you painted the pictures of the lobsters, because I think that's an analogy everyone can really relate to. What advice can you give to our listeners, maybe new investors? Because for some people, it's harder to maybe transcend those lobsters that are pulling you down. And then also maybe, touch on like the internal lobsters.
There you go. So that's the inner voice. That's the one that talks to us 24/7. And I just kind of touched on that. Those two most powerful words there is I am. I've always tried to simplify it. Otherwise, it becomes such a highfalutin conversation that it doesn't have any teeth anymore, right? So I've always looked at it this way, from the standpoint of I can either make progress or I can make excuses, right? There's something crazy, like I think it's like 70,000 thoughts a day we have about ourselves. And they're usually pretty negative. I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too black, I'm too white, I'm too rich, I'm too poor, right? I'm too foreign, I'm too American for that, right? Whatever it is, there's always an excuse rather than an action. So I learned and this is the internal lobster, and that's I've never heard it put that way, Sophie. That's so good. I changed my internal dialogue. I read The Secret by Rhonda Byrne very early in my entrepreneurial career. And they started talking about this thing called the law of attraction. I'm thinking, what a bunch of baloney. Oh, stop it. Right. But then what you do is you start reading stuff like this. You start reading Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and The Secrets of Success by Jack Canfield, and The Four Agreements. Great book, by the way. Here's a great book for you. It's called Rules of a Knight. Rules of a Knight. It's an easy little read. It's the stories about a Cornish knight in England the night before he goes into battle for the last time, and how he leaves these rules of being a knight, being a maiden, being a dignified person of honor, right? Understanding that charity begins at home, all the things that we know to be true, and yet we don't, or we generally, a lot of people don't tend to participate in because they're so wrapped up in life, right? The daily BS. So for me, I worked very hard on, it says on my board over here, it says, replace my fear with faith and then act. And then ask the question, are my actions in line with my intentions, right? If I stick to that creed, the lobsters either come with me or they go behind. It's not my responsibility anymore, right? Sometimes we must love them, but leave them. My own personal journey, I have a twin sister and my mom both came to the States and they could not participate in today. It was too toxic. That's hard. The price that people pay for settling for less, that's a toxicity in and of itself. That's a cancer that grows, because then that settling for less, if there is a next generation, those little minds, those little girls, those little boys, they soak it all up. Oh, you're going to choke me up now. They soak it up. They soak it all up. Like they get it. You know, I've got a 9-year-old, Bennett. You know, I know it's working. I know it's right. It was yesterday morning. He says to me, Dad, I've come up with my logo for my YouTube merch. I go, what? My YouTube merch, Dad. So what you need to start doing on your radio show and your podcast is telling your listeners, your viewers, to start subscribing to my YouTube channel. And I've got my merch logo. I'm going to go to that website where you get your stuff for Freedom Venture. He said, we're just going to get this all going. Okay, Dad? I'm like, buddy, I love you, but I don't think people recognize you yet. It's going to take you a little bit of time to build up your notoriety. Now, this is not my ego, but what the little man then says is, Dad, stop talking silly. I'm the son of the great Dave Seymour. That's what he says. He said, the most famous entrepreneur in the world, Dad, the star of A&E's Flippin' Boston. What do you mean? I was on that show, Dad. People recognize me. He was 2 years old, by the way, when we filmed the show. But the reason I tell you that is the internal dialogue matters. Mm-hmm. And if the internal conversation is right, and it's not every day, it's not perfection, it's progress, right? It's inch by inch. But if that internal dialogue is dialed in better and better and better every day, I am wealth. I am abundance. I am joy. I am authentic. I am the best real estate investor that ever walked the face of the earth without ego, right? If I keep that up front, it creates, I think it was Bob Proctor said, emotion, right? Stands for energy in motion. Disease stands for dis-ease, uncomfortable, not right? We're always looking for homeostasis, a level ground. So the internal dialogue is fixed or is worked on consistently. Well, that resonates out. So then only the lobsters that can bring value come along for the ride, because you very, very quickly identify who's out to sabotage, right? Who's out to cause pain and misery, rather than, joy and abundance. And look, those people exist. They will always exist. But for me personally, I try to just love them and leave them, like I said. It was a hard lesson for me to learn, because when I started, I came out like entrepreneur man. I'm going to save the world. You need to do this and you need to do that. And as soon as you tell somebody what they need to do, they're more than happy to tell you where you can go. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Wow. Yeah. Internal, external.
That's fantastic. Yeah. I thank you so much for all of that. What a powerful vision and story that you just shared. And just to make this come full circle, for people to start off when they're starting to begin their journey, sometimes they're not aware of their internal patterns.
Right.
There might be some things in there that are greed, or there's some internal programming that their external world has kind of either enforced on them or they've embodied, right? And maybe you can help me or back me up on this, but I think that the very first thing to do is to surround yourself with positive influences. No matter what your internal state is, it's like what you're doing is you're on the outside, you're filling up a bank account, right? And so the people that you surround yourself with, they're going to make deposits of positive energy into your personal bank account. And eventually you'll be able to build your bank account up enough to where you're going to attract people to you, and it'll be easier to find people just like that or to level up, right? And I think that internal, external type of value system that goes there, you can see that working in your son, which is
Sure.
powerful and very touching, honestly.
Yeah. Thank you.
Because you're leaving legacy and you're making the
Yeah.
world a better place through real estate investing, but not only real estate investing, that's the vehicle to get there.
Right.
That's what's so cool about this podcast, is that we're supposed to be talking about marriage and real estate. And here we are talking about the fundamentals behind that even, which is crazy. Like there's 4 layers to this onion and we've hit the 5th.
Yeah. You know what it is? Like attracts like, okay? The analogy of osmosis, right? The transference of energy between people. Why are the 1%ers in the 1%? Because they expect a 20% return on every investment that they make. That's the norm. That's what I do. That's what I expect. I don't do 3% yields. That's ridiculous. That's less than the inflation rate. Why are you killing capital? If I had those kinds of discussions with my dad, he wouldn't know what the hell I was talking about, right? It's because his sphere of influence has been and will be dramatically different. It's funny. My old man came over to visit me a few years back when we had the TV show and everything else, and I flew in first class, and he came and watched me teach in an event in Texas. There was over 350 people in the room, and he's looking at me and he's like, "David," he says, I'm not sure what it is you do over here in America." He says, "You're not a drug dealer, are you?" I said, No, Dad, I'm not a drug dealer. I'm a real estate investor." He said, "I don't understand what that means." He says, "But whatever it is, boy, just keep doing it. I'm proud of you," right? So it's like you go down the family tree, you go up the family tree, and the influences change. My father's never going to understand fully what I've done since I came to America as a young man in my 20s, right? But you know this, and sorry to exclude you for a second, Sophie, but as a man, there's 2 things I want, right? I want the pride of my father, and I want the pride of my sons.
Well,
That's it.
That's
it.
That's what every man wants, and I completely agree with that. Having that approval and having the pride, right, going in both directions is just really really something else. Let's treasure it. You can't treasure it. I think one thing I wanted to bring up too. I just recently learned about this book called The Algebra of Happiness by Scott Galloway. And one of the things, while we're talking about influence and internal external values, he has a formula in there that predicts what happiness is, and the formula is W times F times P squared. And what he's saying is that W is your work time. It's how you spend time working, right? And so in our case, that would be real estate investing, or for people that are working full-time jobs, it's their full-time job plus real estate investing. So that's the W. Then times F, which is what you do on your fun time, what you do with leisure, right? So if you work hard and play hard, then that's great. That means that you're probably going to have more happiness, right?
Yeah.
But the P is P squared, and that is your partner. Because you're coming home to your partner and you're going on fun activities, or maybe not, with your partner, right? And so the power of your partner as the person that you interact with daily, as your influencer, right, for your external influencing force, you show me a very successful spouse, and I'll show you a very successful real estate investor and entrepreneur. Successful in a mindset sense. And so I can tell right away, I haven't met your wife, and your wife has elected to spend time with your kids, which is a very wise choice, even though we're having a great time here.
Sure.
But I can tell right away that you're married to your wife for a reason, and she's married to you for a reason. And your happiness factor is going up, not just because of your work, what you do on work, what you do at fun, and just those 2 things alone are great. But really what juices everything up and makes everything better and amplifies everything is the fact that you get to spend that with your spouse.
Sure.
So I don't know if you want to say anything to that. I just thought I would offer that up.
No, it's just so good. Look, I always want to be brutally authentic. Okay. And there are many, many times where I come through the door and she says, I just want some adult conversation. And I look at her and I say, baby girl, I got nothing left. I've been talking from the minute I walked into the office to the minute I left. I'm pretty much done with people today. Can I just get a hug and let's curl up and watch TV and do something? Unless you got a 911, then I'm really not feeling too chatty right now, right? So it's not leave it to Beaver. You know what I'm saying? It's not that. It's a comfort with our nuances, right? Neuroses, right? She says to me, it's funny, like, this is a fantastic conversation. I'm enjoying the engagement. I've got new friends, right? But she says to me a lot of the time, she says, you don't like people, do you? And I'm like, well, what do you mean? She says, are you just up and engaged? She said, because that engaged person that I see when you're on stage, when you're doing a deal, when you're on a podcast, when you're shooting video, when you're flying around the country. She said, I don't see that guy. I don't know that guy. She said, the guy that comes home, has got a few complaints about a few people he met along the way. She said, do you even like people? And I'm like, you know what, Mary Beth? It's not that I like people. I just have a tolerance today. At 54 years old, I have a tolerance for some people and a seeking of others, right? So, I am blessed. This little woman decided, she said, I chose the day I married you. I chose to just get on the journey of Hurricane David. That's what she said. She said, it's Hurricane David. She said, and I'm okay with that. I had a therapist once, and this was when the TV show was going on, and my life was changing dramatically from broke to financial independence. And this guy's name was Charlie, and he was just like Robin Williams in Good Will Hunting. Remember that character, that therapist? Well, that was my Charlie. And he came in one day and he said to me, he said, you know what, buddy? I go, what's that, Charlie? He goes, I'm going to start bringing popcorn to our sessions. I go, why? He goes, I love being your therapist. He said, it's like watching a freaking movie. Only it's real, right? That's what the guy says to me. So to be that big and out there, there's an equilibrium and a balance. That's the word. That's what it is. She brings balance. She keeps me grounded. I'll be on a stage, the millionaire real estate investor changing people's lives. And there'd be Damon John on one side and Tony Robbins on the other, and Pitbull's coming out in a minute. And yay, right? Do all of that silliness. And then I when the boys were little, I'd fly in, get dropped off by the limousine. I'd walk in the house. She'd say, hey, Rockstar, welcome home. That kid's got a shitty diaper. You need to change that. You know what I mean? I'm like, oh, okay, I'm home. That's the chemistry. That's the mojo.
That's fantastic. I love that. That's so relatable, right? Because, you have the superstar life outside. Right. And then when you come back in, that's so inspiring for a lot of people that you have a life that's somewhat, I don't want to say mundane, because mundane isn't the right word.
No.
It's more typical, right? It's something. Right. It's what marriages do. It's people that are contented and happy in a marriage. That's what happens at home. So right. Anyway, I wanted to back up one thing. I want to ask you one thing, okay? In your investing career, has there been any time in which your wife has not agreed with you or has decided that, well, this guy seems fishy, or like there's something not right?
Wow, look at you.
And have you actually, like, did you listen to it? Did you not listen to it? Maybe you can tell us a story there. I have a feeling that you have one because you seem like a man of many stories.
Yeah, look, I got a philosophy in life. I don't want to tear somebody else down to build me up, right? But my wife never overly loved my business partner on the TV show. He was from a cultural background that was very male-oriented, atypical, alpha male. And, one of the things that was a gift for me was to be very large and present, engaging, right? I studied at a performing arts college. I did some comedy in London. Like, put me in front of a crowd of 150 people, I'm going to have a good time, right? I'm going to engage them, entertain them, inspire. So there was tension in that relationship with the guy, my partner, Peter, on the TV show. She used to say all the time, she said, just be careful, be careful. I don't know. She said, I got a feeling, be careful, be careful. And, it manifested, later on in the relationship, it went kind of skewy for a while, and there was some unpleasantries, and it was around finances and roles and responsibilities, and everything had been a straight up, partnership, a brosif. And, a day came when, for some reason, that was no longer perceived to be of equal value, what he did and what I did. So I always said to her, I said, no, I got control of this. There was a bigger picture. And I think long projection on it, I mean, it was good. I mean, the day, it's funny, you talk about permission, right? When I ended that business relationship with him, I no longer needed his permission to do real estate or participation in a real estate. I went out the week after I ended that relationship and I bought $5 million worth of real estate in 1 week, right?
Unbelievable.
That real estate, we just liquidated, me and another partner, 5 years later, more than doubled it in value. It's almost like a 6,000% ROI because I used OPM to do the whole transactions anyway, right?
That's incredible.
So, yeah, it's, they're always good lessons, man. Find the lesson inside of it. With regard to individual transactions, no, she never had an opinion because she very rarely knew what I was doing anyway. We had kind of made an unwritten agreement as to what our daily chores or routines were going to be. So
Absolutely. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of people that we interview and people that we talk to that end up working together as a husband-wife team in
Yeah.
real estate investing. But
Yeah.
I always like to back up and say, you know what, even if the partner is not generally involved in the real estate investing itself, they're still a partner because they're
Right.
creating the space,
Sure.
the accountability, and the success, and also the ability for you to rest, right? Like all of that
Yeah.
stuff feeds into it. It's all related with one another. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
would also say that you're still partners with your wife in your business.
Oh, I am. I am. And look, I've, like I said, I've been in the education space for probably around 8 or 10 years now as well. And I've met thousands, and I mean literally thousands of couples, the middle class American will say, the well-paid W-2 employee who knows that their retirement account isn't going to get them to the finish line. And they have that holy moment, you know what I mean? Oh my Lord, we got to do something different. And I've met some couples where it was just too fearful and too much friction that one would go without the other. And I saw marriages break apart for it. I saw some marriages where one would go for it and one wouldn't, and yet they'd come together when the results started coming through. And then I've seen some marriages, and I think the speed of execution and implementation is a lot higher, to your point, when you've got, that solid, go for it, go get them, baby, I love you, go get them, killer, I'm proud of you. You know what I mean? That kind of philosophy behind it, that just pours gasoline on it and gives it power. So, yeah.
Yeah, just some amazing, amazing wisdom, Dave. We touched on a little bit earlier too, with your boys.
Yeah.
I wanna hear a little bit more about your definition of legacy and how you see that manifesting for yours.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm blessed. I have an older son from my prior marriage. He's now 26 years old, Robert. And early in my real estate career, still with his mother, it wasn't a good breakup. There was a lot of animosity there. But if it wasn't for my ex-mother-in-law, Robert wouldn't have been in my life, right? She was absolutely committed to a father having access to his son. So Robert was, 8 years old. I start real estate investing. He's probably 10, 11. So from 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, he's really beginning to absorb it all. And this is my definition of legacy, right? It's changing a mindset. It's not intentionally influencing anything. It's just being, right? Being, because the son looks up to the father. So I remember Robert, his grandmother, my ex-wife's mom, passed away, and I was named as the executor of her estate. And she left a two-family property in Swampscott, Massachusetts, on the beach, free and clear. And she left it to Robert, who was 18 when Grandma passed. And he looks at me and he says, "Dad, what are we going to do with Grandma's house?" And I said, "It's not what we're going to do with it, Robert. It's what you're going to do with it. What do you want to do?" He said, well, Dad, I think we should do some work to one of the apartments, bring it up a little bit, do a fluff and buff, he says, right? Like he knows what fluff and buff is now, right? 18. He says, and then we'll cash flow it. Let's cash flow. He says, but I'm going to need a property manager. He said, do you know anybody? I said, yes, Robert, I'll property manage it for you. So that was his first take on it. Then he turns 20 years old. And this was the moment that I knew the legacy was right, Sophie, because he says to me, Dad, grandma's house, it's dead equity, right, Dad? I go, what? He goes, it's dead equity. There's no mortgage on it. I go, right. Now I know where he's going, but I want to hear him say it. I said, well, what's your point? He said, well, couldn't we get a HELOC on it, Dad? I said, what's that, Robert? He goes, Dad, a home equity line of credit. I go, dude, you're 20 years old. No bank's going to give you a HELOC on a property you don't live in. He said, I said, you'd need a sponsor, somebody to sign on the line for you. He said, well, do you know anybody, Dad? I said, as a matter of fact, I do, right? So I go to my banking relationships. We get the kid like 250, 350. I can't remember what it was. So I said, I talked to my friends at the bank, Robert. They're prepared to give you a home equity line of credit. $250,000 I'll co-sign on your behalf because it's free and clear. And then he said that the magic words, this is legacy. He says to me, he says, Dad, how much is the interest rate on the HELOC? I go, it's 5%. He said, how much can we lend it at, Dad? I go, what? He said, how much can we lend the money at? I said, well, I don't understand the question, Robert. What are you asking me? He said, well, can't we do that hard money lending thing that you do, Dad? He said, if I borrow the money from the bank at 5%, can you lend it for me out in the marketplace so I can make money in the gap? That's what he said to me, right? 20 years old. I'm like crying like a baby. I'm like, oh, Hercules, right? I made it. I molded that mind.
Wow.
And that's what we did. Like he asked me to leverage the bank's money, leverage the equity in his property. So that's my definition of a legacy, right? Because he looks at things differently. My old man didn't tell me that, right? And then my little guys, well, you see the legacy in Bennett just in that one story. Jefferson is his mother's son. Jefferson is very timid. He's got a little anxiety in him sometimes. He's a little bit shy. He likes everything the way it should be. But he's probably the smartest kid I've ever known at 11 years old. That kid's a genius. He's going to do something magnificent. And he says all the time, he says, yeah, I don't think I'm going to work for somebody, Dad. I'm going to create something that everybody wants to buy. So, okay, buddy, let's figure out what that is. If I can help you, you let me know. Yeah, I'll let you know when I need you, Dad. So, that's legacy, Soph, I think, for me. That's kind of the way I look at it,
Wow, great stories. This is really inspiring for a lot of those couples that are just getting started out there and maybe have very young kids because, when people are just starting out, they have maybe a couple of newborns or even, it's not too late if the kids are before teenagers, I think.
Right.
There's a lot of things you can do just within a year that can really start to get them to question the things that you're doing, right? So this is really inspiring for people who want to set up a new branch in their family tree. And so thank you very much for sharing some of those details.
No worries, brother.
I think we could do this all day, right?
We could probably.
I have like 50 questions for you, and we haven't been able to ask any of them. So that's okay because we have such good stuff here, and this is really good. What we're going to do is we're going to head into the final segment of our show now, which is called Rapid Round. We're going to be asking you the 5 questions that we ask every one of our guests. And the intent is for it to be, 30 seconds or less answer in this.
Good luck with that.
Yeah, exactly. Do the best you can. But, we also have the power of video editing too. So that's
okay. Awesome.
But all right. Do you want to ask the questions?
Yeah.
Go for it.
All right, Dave. So first question is, what book has had the biggest impact on you and why?
The Secret by Rhonda Byrne. Just knowing that the law of attraction is real. Resetting my internal dialogue, what I think about, I bring about, setting intention. So absolutely, that was the first book that really rocked my world a little bit.
Amazing, nice. And if people wanted to be just like you, what is the first actionable thing they could do to follow in your footsteps?
I'm sorry, I have to answer that. Don't be me. Just be wonderful you, whoever you are, right? Find your true purpose in life. There is nobody better than anybody else on this planet. We just all have different skill sets that we bring to the marketplace. If you want to learn real estate at a very high level, educate, don't speculate, right? Learn, implement, learn, implement, learn, implement, and just keep moving forward. So that's how I answer that question, young lady.
Love it, love it. And next question is, what small thing do most people not know about you?
There's well, I ran the Boston Marathon after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, 343 of our brothers died that day in the towers in New York. And I decided I wanted to do something. I didn't know what it was. So I trained to do the Boston Marathon and raise money. That was my first and last one. I think I'm still hurting today.
You're still recovering.
All these years later. Probably one of the most powerful days of my life. You want to talk about personal development? Run a marathon for purpose. That'll change your life.
That is definitely mind over matter for sure. That's the embodiment of a marathon for sure, right? Okay, number 4. How do you like to unwind and restore your creative juice by yourself?
Grown-up Lego sets. I just finished a 10,050 piece Coliseum Lego set. I have a street that's over 12 feet long of Lego houses. It's called the Master Set. Very mind numbing. It allows me to just, you know what it is? When I start, I know what the finish looks like. There's no variables. Life has too many variables in it, so you have to play in balance. I like putting all those little bricks together, following the map and going, wow, look at that. There's a little house. Look, I built that.
I'm probably going to cut this out because this is just a side story. But in my book, one of the things, the analogy that I really hammer on is Legos. How every rental property that you get or every unit that you get that cash flows for you is a little Lego brick. And the more you can accumulate, the more things you can build, right? And so you can build a moat around yourself. You can build anything that you want, right?
Sure.
I like to use that. And plus, I love Legos as a kid, and I like to write programs, but I also like talking to people. So I feel like I have, both of those things, going for me. And I just love that you love Legos. And the next time you come to Legoland in California, is it in California or is it in Florida?
Yeah, you got one in Florida, one in Cali. If you go to Amazon Prime, if you have Amazon Prime Video, Google my name. There's like a 5-minute video in there that was shot by one of our film crews, and it shows all of my Legos in my kids' toy room. So you'll be able to see it for yourself if you want to get a kick out of it.
We're definitely going to be doing that tonight. Maybe the Legoland is what you have at home that's probably the real Lego.
I do. I have it at home. I have it at home. I just finished one tonight before I came to the office. I just finished up the new Porsche that they bought out, little car. And I got like 15 cars on the fire mantle in my office. I've got problems, man. I don't drink anymore, but man, that and tropical fish as well. I like tropical fish tanks. I got a couple of different tanks. So
I think the next thing that's on the list logically is a Lego fish tank. Oh wow, there you go. Isn't it? I mean,
I'm there.
I'm sure there's some sealant somewhere that, like, some waterproofing that
I'm sure we could. Yeah, I'm in. I like it. I'm going to build it, design it, and it will manifest. You watch.
That's amazing. Love it. All right. Okay, let's go. Number 5. Is there something special that you and your family and kids like to do together?
Yeah, it's not creative. It's TV time at the end of the night. We have a show that we like to watch. The 4 of us cuddle on the couch. Mom's got a great regimented routine for them. That's how we finish our day together as a fam. Not super communicative, but it's ours, and we look forward to it. So we love to do that, and then get to the beach. A couple of vacations each year. Spend some time on the beach is good.
Very good. I like that. There is something to be said about a ritual. I think that's a family tradition, and that really means something to a lot of people, for sure.
Yeah.
Excellent. Well, Dave, thank you so much for being on the show. This was like this is probably the most fun I've ever had on a podcast, either listening or recording to one. So thank you so much for giving me that experience, or giving us the experience.
And then also it just felt, what was so special is that like we felt like we had you to ourselves for an hour.
So selfish.
Yeah.
So selfish. You selfish woman, you. Look, guys, I love finding my people, right? As you love finding your people. And when we find those folks that resonate on the same wavelengths, it's special. People come into our life for a reason, a season, or a lifetime, right? And we never know what that is unless we step into it. So
yes.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure
Absolutely.
talking with you guys.
Absolutely, it was. And Dave, before you go, please tell the listeners out there, tell our audience, tell everyone out on YouTube and Facebook and Spotify and Stitcher, tell us how we can learn more about you, your offerings, and anything that you have going on out there. We really want to hear more about
We got to do another podcast just for the real estate stuff. Yeah. I actually do real estate. You can find us at freedomventure.com. If you just Google my name, Dave Seymour, you can find me. If it's cool with you guys, I have places where people can go for some gifts. There's a new app out there right now called Clubhouse. I don't know if you're familiar with it, if you're on there. Yeah, so I've got a pretty strong network on Clubhouse. I actually bought in over $1 million on Clubhouse last week for one of our syndicated deals. It was kind of cool the way that worked out with another investor. But if you've got to put it in the search bar, daveseymour.club. When you do that, there's some analytical tools. It's my go-tos. They're nice and simple. My cash flow analysis spreadsheets, my rehab spreadsheets that I used my whole career on buy, fix, and flip. There's also my construction schedule and a checklist that I've done for properties for years. So those are free downloads that your listeners can grab. If you do have accredited investor listeners on your podcast, and they're looking to put capital to work, higher rates of return, then you can go to freedomventure.com, scroll down the bottom. There's a white paper on there. It's our #1 white paper download. And it talks about, is alternative investments, real estate, necessary for a balanced retirement portfolio? And there's some fantastic data in there that my team put together. So that's another gift, some education, some reading. But if you go to freedomventure.com, there's hours and hours of podcasts and interviews. Great interview there with Jack Canfield that I did. And also a lot of education, just understanding the power of commercial real estate investing and how we do it in our company. So yeah, you can find out about me if you want to.
Excellent. Yeah, it sounds like there's plenty out there, and I'm sure that our listeners are going to be taking a look and taking a listen. And I certainly will as well. And so, Dave, thank you so much. It's been an honor to have you on. And for you listeners out there who are listening all the way through to the very end, we appreciate you. We thank you so much. And wherever you're listening to this, please hit like and subscribe, whether it's Facebook or Spotify or Stitcher or iTunes. We just want to help those algorithm gods push us up closer to the top of the list, right? We want to get more exposure to people. And so please comment and subscribe, and just in general, let us know how we're doing. We want to make sure that we're providing enough value to you and to anyone that you recommend this show to. You can also go to elevateequity.org. That's our website. And we have some free information as well for people. But definitely Dave Seymour is the man if you want to get straight to the source. So anyway, that being said, that is the end of the show. And this is Derek.
And this is Sophie.
Signing off. Thank you, guys.